The third wave of feminism emerged in the early 1990s and continued into the 2000s, representing a significant shift in the feminist movement's focus and approach. This wave was characterized by its embrace of diversity, individuality, and intersectionality, as well as its reaction to perceived shortcomings of earlier feminist waves. Key features of third wave feminism, intersectionality, developed from the work of scholars like Kimberlé Crenshaw. Intersectionality became a cornerstone of third wave feminism. It emphasizes how overlapping identities, e.g., race, class, gender, sexual orientation, create unique experiences of oppression and privilege. Third wave feminists sought to address the lack of inclusivity in earlier feminist movements, particularly the exclusion of women of color, LGBTQ individuals, and other marginalized groups, reclaiming femininity and sexuality. Unlike the second wave, which often critiqued traditional femininity, the third wave celebrated women's freedom to embrace femininity, sexual expression, and choice. Concepts like girly feminism emerged, where traditionally feminine traits and interests, e.g., makeup, fashion, were reclaimed as empowering. Challenge to norms and binaries. Third wave feminists questioned rigid gender roles and binary definitions of gender and sexuality. It celebrated nonconformity and fluidity, making space for a broader spectrum of identities. Critique of second wave feminism. The third wave often critiqued the second wave for being overly focused on the experiences of white, middle-class women. It emphasized global perspectives and the experiences of women from different cultures, economic backgrounds, and social contexts. Pop culture and media. Third wave feminism leveraged pop culture to spread feminist ideas. Figures like riot grrrl musicians, authors like bell hooks, and TV shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer became emblematic of this wave. Feminist discourse expanded into online spaces and zines, allowing younger feminists to organize and express themselves. Key movements and goals. Advocacy for reproductive rights, body positivity, and workplace equality remained central but were framed with a more inclusive lens. The wave also tackled issues like sexual harassment, LGBT+ rights, and violence against women. Criticisms. Critics argue that third wave feminism sometimes lacked a unified agenda and was overly fragmented. Others have noted that its focus on individuality and personal empowerment occasionally overshadowed systemic and collective action. Transition to fourth wave feminism. By the 2010s, the third wave began to evolve into the fourth wave, marked by the rise of digital activism, social media campaigns like #MeToo, and a renewed focus on systemic change and accountability. Would you like to explore any specific aspects or examples of third wave feminism further? Third wavers inherited a foothold of institutional power created by second wavers, including women's studies programs at universities, long-standing feminist organizations, and well-established publishing outlets such as Ms. and several academic journals. These outlets became a less important part of the culture of the third wave than they had been for the second wave. The globalization of feminism. By the end of the 20th century, European and American feminists had begun to interact with the nascent feminist movements of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. As this happened, women in developed countries, especially intellectuals, were horrified to discover that women in some countries were required to wear veils in public or to endure forced marriage, female infanticide, widow burning, or female genital cutting, FGC. Many Western feminists soon perceived themselves as saviors of third world women, little realizing that their perceptions of and solutions to social problems were often at odds with the real lives and concerns of women in these regions. In many parts of Africa, for example, the status of women had begun to erode significantly only with the arrival of European colonialism. In those regions then, the notion that patriarchy was the chief problem, rather than European imperialism, seemed absurd. The conflicts between women in developed and developing nations played out most vividly at international conferences. After the 1980 World Conference of the United Nations Decade for Women, Equality, Development, and Peace, in Copenhagen, women from less developed nations complained that the Veil and FGC had been chosen as conference priorities without consulting the women most concerned. It seemed that their counterparts in the West were not listening to them. During the 1994 International Conference on Population and Development in Cairo, women from the Third World protested outside because they believed the agenda had been hijacked by Europeans and Americans.